How's it going? So I'm Jonesy from Practice Probiotics. This is the first Thrive Together interview for the Practice Probiotics website, which is being launched very soon. It's clearly been launched because you're watching it through that. And I'm joined today by my dear friend and colleague, Lucy Kay from Mind and Body Tree. And we thought we'd spark off this series of interviews that we're doing over the course of the future with a bit of an introductory interview about what me and Lucy have been doing, what Lucy's up to with regard to Mind and Body Tree, what's going on with Practice Probiotics, and various other bits and bobs that we're working on at the moment. So, myself and Lucy, just for those that don't know, we've been running some gut health and fermentation workshops over the last few months and over the last year generally. We have one coming up at Rask in Derby at the bottom of Saturday on November the 1st, and there's still spaces if anybody would like to sign up and book on for that. There's a Facebook event page link at the bottom of this video, so please check that out. I think the first thing I'd like to just spark off is with Lucy is, so we've been running these workshops together.
Yeah.
We have now ran 4 introduction to gut health and fermentation workshops, and from your point of view, because obviously we share a lot of common passions and a lot of common interests.
Yeah.
With Practice Probiotics, we specialise in producing probiotic foods and drinks, and as a nutritional therapist, you're generally passionate about people's health and well-being, primarily from a sort of nutrition point of view. So what is the crack? Like, we're hearing it so regularly now, people are talking about gut health. There's loads of books filling the shelves, bookshops about gut health, what you can do to heal your gut. You're reading articles left, right and centre about gut health and the microbiome, whatever that might be, which is becoming, an increasingly important concept, term, reality. It's being defined as an organ that many people are not aware of. People are saying things like, all disease begins in the gut, and, something that we're really keen to raise awareness about and help empower people with. But why? What's the crap with this? Gut health, fermentation. What's so important about gut health?
Okay, so lots of stuff there. Brilliant. Lovely introduction. So actually, all disease begins in the gut was a term first coined by Hippocrates 2,000 years ago, so it's not a new concept at all. When I did my nutritional therapy training, we talked about the gut a lot, learned about what the gut is, how the digestive system works, all the microbes that reside there, and all the many functions that they perform. And then when it came to doing clinical work while I was studying, but also over the last year seeing clients, and I've seen clients with all kinds of different problems, from autoimmune conditions to low energy levels, depression, anxiety, IBS, inflammatory bowel disease, all kinds of conditions. And I find that in pretty much all cases, some work needs to be done in the gut. There's either a problem with absorption, or there is some dysbiosis with the microbes, and for whatever reason it's having a knock-on effect throughout the rest of the body. So, it's very relevant for me because I see it on a regular basis with my clients. So I think it's the kind of thing that I'm passionate about letting people know about. It's one way that people can take back control of their health. It's quite simple actually. When we do the gut health workshops, a lot of the information that we provide, a lot of the advice that we give are just very simple steps that people can take to improve their gut health and therefore improve their overall health.
Thank you very much. So is there something particular about, if we think about the context, so we're living in the 21st century, we're living here, Derby, in England, thinking about the West, thinking about the way that our societies are structured, thinking about the kind of the ways in which people's diets have been sort of shaped over recent decades. Is it something specifically relevant to people living in this time within this context?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key drivers of of chronic disease, of and of problems in the gut is actually stress. So there's lots and lots of research now showing that the effects that stress has on the gut and therefore on the rest of the body. So we do live very stressful, very on the go all the time, working long hours because we have this, we have phones and tablets, so we're never really kind of switching off. We're always kind of on the go all the time, and that really that kind of puts us into this fight or flight mode, really, all the time, which is a biological process that is meant to switch on and off when we're in times of danger, and then switch back off again. But because we're kind of in this state of chronic stress, it's having a really knock-on effect on our gut microbiome, as you mentioned earlier. So that's one key thing. Diet is another key thing. So we live in an age of fast food, convenience food, processed foods, and a lot of these foods have a negative impact on our gut microbes, not just on us, but on our gut microbes. So eating those kinds of foods regularly changes the composition of our microbiome, of the bacteria that live in our gut.
So if I just quickly ask, like microbiome, it might be a term, even though it's like, rising in its popularity and in common usage. For those out there that don't know what the microbiome is, like, would you be willing to kind of like simplify that, help people understand? Yeah, so microbiome is a term that is used to describe the collective body of our microbes that live in our gut. So we have 100 trillion different microorganisms living in our bodies, a large proportion of those living in the gut. And they perform all kinds of different functions. We have maybe around 1,000 different species of organisms. And we have a kind of symbiotic relationship with them. So they help us, we help them. We provide them a home, we provide warmth, food, moisture, all the kind of conditions that bacteria like. And in turn, they help us to digest our food, they help us to absorb our food, they produce some minerals, some nutrients for us. So we have this symbiotic relationship with them. And they're very important for our overall health and well-being. We couldn't even exist without them. So people are saying this idea that, all right, so you mentioned 100 trillion. So we've got 100 trillion little bugs, like bacterias and yeasts, and there's parasites, there's all sorts of bits and bobs that are floating around there. 100 trillion, I mean, it's quite difficult to get your head around exactly what that looks like. But one thing that people are saying, again, quite regularly, whenever I'm reading books about gut health and I'm really trying to educate myself about the microbiome, this idea that we're actually only 10% human, like we're outnumbered 10 to 1. If we think about our human cells, and then we think about all of the different microorganisms, all of these different bacteria that actually live within us, that we depend upon, so we actually depend upon these microbes for all of our functioning, all of our health and well-being. They outnumber us 10 to 1, so we're 10% human.
I mean, there's various different estimates from what research paper or from where you read, but yes, it is looking likely that we have roughly 10 times more microbes in our body than human cells.
So we can consider ourselves as being like super organisms.
Absolutely.
We're a super organism that exists interdependently in a symbiotic relationship with bacteria. And over the decades, I think it's fair to say, and please feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong, that bacteria's had a bit of a bad rap. It's had a bit of a bad rap. We've kind of grown up, many of us have grown up over the decades within a culture where there's a bit of a paradigm which suggests that bacteria are problematic and we need to try and get rid of bacteria because obviously there are some bacteria which can be harmful or potentially harmful, and then there's bacteria which are beneficial. What would you have to say about this?
So most
of any confusion that people might have about this.
So most of the bacteria that live inside us and in the world around us are either harmless or beneficial. So they might produce minerals, or the bacteria inside us, they work with our immune system, for example, so they're beneficial. There are obviously some that are harmful, but the problem is that we can sometimes indiscriminately target all of our microbes when we're trying to eliminate harmful bacteria. So using a lot of things like bleach and cleaners and just trying to kind of have a very sterile environment, for example, actually kills off a lot of beneficial bacteria. Things like using antibiotics, again, they're quite indiscriminate, they can kill off a lot of our internal flora, which is beneficial. And then it can take us a little while after a course of antibiotics, for example, to recover our original flora. So yes, so we have had this kind of and there's a thing now called the hygiene hypothesis, which says that a lot of common, particularly childhood conditions like asthma and eczema and allergies and things like that are possibly in part due to an over-sanitised environment. So bacteria, one of their main functions is actually working with our immune system, almost training our immune system. So if we're not exposed to them in the first place, our immune system doesn't get that training. So that's definitely one contributor.
So if there was somebody that, obviously they want the best possible environment for their family to live in, and imagine maybe just hypothetically that somebody's just had a child, like a newborn baby, they're bringing into the household, and would you advise them to try and create a sterile environment? Would it be something that people should take as a priority to try and sterilise their environment and get rid of bacteria, or are you saying, from what I'm picking up, you're saying that actually bacteria can be something that's important?
Obviously, we need to be very careful, and newborn babies, for example, are quite vulnerable to infections. So if you're bottle feeding, for example, then it is important to sterilise the equipment and that kind of thing. But there's research now that says children that grow up around a pet, a dog or a cat or an animal, are less likely to develop childhood illnesses like allergies, eczema, asthma, those kind of atopic conditions. And it's thought that the exposure to the microorganisms that come with having a pet is actually good for building up the immune system. So I wouldn't want to advise anybody kind of one way or the other, but just kind of thinking about that overall picture gives you an idea of what might be sensible.
So chuck it in the mud.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, people are talking about, obviously, like you just said, I guess we're talking about the nature of the immune system as well.
Yeah.
So and this brings us on maybe to this idea about balance.
Yeah.
About trying to create a healthy balance of beneficial bacteria and harmful bacteria.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, sometimes people are curious, well, surely, ideally, you just have 100% beneficial bacteria. If you're looking at a balance between good bacteria and potentially harmful bacteria, you want as many beneficial bacteria as possible, ideally 100%.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why we're not seeking 100%.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So kind of naturally, we have a balance of roughly 90% beneficial bacteria and about 10% which are, and I won't say bad because you hear that term a lot, good bacteria, bad bacteria. They're not necessarily bad. But they're opportunistic, they are potentially harmful. So given the right conditions, they can become problematic for us. And we need those bacteria because they basically keep the immune system on its toes. If the immune system never had to deal with any potential pathogens, then everything that we were eating, everything that was coming through, if it was all completely safe, and if we didn't have some potentially harmful bacteria in the gut already, the immune system would get lazy. It wouldn't be bothered with checking all these different particles, all these different microbes, and checking to see if it's going to harm us, is it going to help us, do we need to eliminate it, do we need to get rid of that, or can we allow it into the bloodstream. So it's basically training for our immune system. So we do need to have that balance. We need to have roughly 90% of, or it's thought anyway, I mean, bear in mind this is a very, very new, relatively new field of research, so there's new information coming to light all the time, but it's thought that yes, 90% good bacteria, 10% potentially harmful, but as long as it's kept in check, it's actually fine.
And do you think that the bulk of the population, let's again just imagine if we just focus on people living in the West, people that have potentially kind of grown up, surrounded by the advertisements of the food corporations, with the rise of the food industry, and how they've gone about trying to shape people's behaviours in order to consume certain products which are highly profitable for them, and the effect and impact that a lot of our understandings surrounding food have had on our dietary behaviours. So if we're just to simplify that, if we were to take, a typical person walking down the street, walking down St. Peter Street in Derby, pretty average, typical Western diet, would you reckon that they'd have this sort of 90-10 balance? I mean, I know it's impossible to know,
it's possible to know,
what's your general thought? To what extent is the bulk of the population keeping a 90-10 ratio?
It's unlikely, and studies have shown that if you compare the microbiome of somebody on what's known as a typical Western diet, or in America they call it the standard American diet, and you compare that to somebody who lives a hunter-gatherer, very traditional type lifestyle, the hunter-gatherers had something like 3 times more diversity of their bacteria than those who have followed a typical Western diet for most of their lives. So, and diversity is really, really important. Diversity has been linked with lower rates of modern chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, all these kind of conditions, obesity. So diversity is really, really important. You need to have a hugely diverse microbiome with lots of different species. And the different species feed on different foods. So what's thought to be key in creating diversity is what we eat, what we feed our microbes. So if we eat a very bland, lack of diversity type diet, lots of kind of starchy carbohydrates, lots of bread, lots of pasta, lots of sugar, that kind of thing, there's only going to be kind of one type of bacteria that's going to proliferate. Whereas in hunter-gatherer type lifestyles, they have a lot of different roots and tubers, and lots of different plants, lots of different leaves, lots of different fruits, and they feed all different types of bacteria. So they're getting much more diverse and varied microbiome than us.
Excellent. So I guess we're kind of touching on what we can do to try and improve the health of our gut here. And when I'm in a workshop with you, it's always fascinating to learn more about the gut, the nature of the gut. It's like an underrated, underappreciated, absolutely crucial part of the human anatomy, and it's absolutely central and fundamental to our health and well-being because of this idea that everything that we need to function, to survive and flourish depends upon largely our ability to absorb nutrients into our bodies. So diet is obviously a key part of that. And when you're in workshops, obviously there's a part where people are learning a huge amount about the gut, about the nature of the gut, about how the gut works, the importance of the gut. And you look at some of the factors that contribute to poor gut health, which affect all of us really, affects all of us. You touch on so many different things, which people can find out more about by coming onto the workshops or talking to you personally. But then we make sure that we try and empower people and inspire people and equip people with the relevant knowledge they need so they can go away and actually contribute to reclaiming their health and improving their gut health so that they can be as well as possible. So would you be willing just to touch upon a little bit of the things that people can do in order to improve their gut health?
Yeah, so one of the key things is get more fibre in your diet. Fibre is a key food for bacteria. We don't really use fibre. It's used primarily to feed our gut microbes. So we get our fibre from whole grains and plant foods really. So vegetables, fruits, beans, pulses, that kind of thing. So really, most of us don't have enough of these food types in our diet, so we need to be really boosting our intake of plant foods. Things like onions, garlic, artichokes are particularly good for our microbes. They're called prebiotics, and they feed they are particularly good food for our microbiome, and they help our microbes to proliferate.
So I've heard of probiotics.
Yeah.
And so there's probiotics,
Yeah.
and then you've got prebiotics.
Yeah. Yeah, so prebiotics are just simply food for our bacteria. So probiotics are foods that contain actual bacteria that can then help to proliferate a different diversity in the gut. So with probiotic foods, we're looking at things like kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, kefir, plain yogurt. So obviously a lot of the kind of products that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about that on the workshop, we do a little demo on how to make your own sauerkraut. So the probiotic foods contain the bacteria, so they're really helpful. They're really helpful at maximising microbiome diversity. And then the prebiotics you want to eat alongside because they will provide food for those bacteria, helping them to kind of establish themselves and grow and proliferate and be happy. So.
Excellent. So that's the kind of, there's many different strands to this, isn't there? And to me, it's really fascinating and really important information. It's life-changing information. It's potentially life-saving information. And you focus there on, fibre and prebiotics and this idea of ultimately eating good food.
Yeah.
Good food.
Yeah.
And eat the rainbow.
Yes,
is something that I've heard you say before.
Yeah.
So the more different colours within your diet will contribute to potentially feeding and creating conditions that allow more diverse species of bacteria proliferate, which can contribute to greater health, which is really important. But as a nutritional therapist, obviously your priority, the emphasis is upon food, nutrition. But you're also interested and passionate to keep learning about other lifestyle factors.
Absolutely.
It's not just about what you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about people that are out there that are wanting to optimise their gut health or heal their gut, what other advice might you have for people? Do's and don'ts, or do's, or whatever you want?
Yeah, so I absolutely, when I see clients, for example, it's never just, here's your diet, this is what you have to eat, off you go. It's always, I'm always looking at a holistic picture. What else is going on in their lives? Where else can we make improvements that will benefit their health? And not everybody can do everything all at once, and that's fine. But it's about having, lots of ideas, lots of bits of information, and you can start to go, okay, well this week perhaps I'm going to try and implement that thing, and then the next week I'm going to try and implement the next thing. So as I mentioned earlier, stress is such a huge contributor. In fact, I was just listening this morning to Dr. Chatterjee on his podcast, and he was saying that he reckons 80% of the patients that he sees in his surgery are in the situation they're in, their health is related to stress in some way. So it's absolutely critical to look at the stress levels. Obviously, you can't always just take the stresses out of your life. But how do you manage your stress levels? What kind of what strategies do you have for dealing with those things? So it might be, for some people, meditation. It might be exercise. It might be having periods in the day where you have your phone on airplane mode, so you can't be constantly accessible. That kind of thing. So managing stress is really important. Exercise is another key one. So lack of exercise or leading a sedentary lifestyle has a negative impact on your microbiome and on your gut health. And sleep, I always want to find out how my clients are sleeping, because sleep has a really big impact on the gut. There was a study done recently in which healthy individuals who had a good, diverse microbiome and they slept well, they were deprived of sleep for 2 nights, where they got 4 hours sleep instead of 8. and there had been significant changes in their microbiome after just 2 days. So lack of sleep is really important, and we'd be looking at the causes, whether they were struggling to get to sleep or whether they were waking up often in the night, and helping clients on a one-to-one basis figure that out and get better sleep.
Excellent. So just to bring this back to yourself with regard to the mind and body tree, which is your nutritional therapy business.
Yeah.
As a nutritional therapist, you've touched upon it there.
Yeah.
If somebody was to come to you because they've got concerns about their health, or they just wanted to improve their diet, or whatever it might be, I mean, maybe you can just tell us about what are some of the main motivations that people have when they get in touch with you, and what can they expect?
Yeah, so clients get in touch with me for a number of reasons. It might be that they want to lose weight, or they might want to just feel or just have optimal health. They might have a condition that they're dealing with. It might be something like ulcerative colitis or rheumatoid arthritis. They might have been taking a lot of medications and they want to try and take a more natural route. They might want to improve their energy levels. They might have been struggling all their life with something like depression. So it can be a whole range of different things. If you would go and see your doctor, then you might want to come and see me, as well as to try and work out how you can use your diet and your lifestyle to improve your condition, to improve your symptoms. So it's quite an involved process. I see clients I usually do a package where I see them over a 3-month period. The initial consultation lasts about 2 hours. I gather lots and lots of information about them, about their health, about their body systems, how everything's working, their medical history, what medications are on the on. So it's a very thorough, detailed history that I take. And then I will talk to them about their diet and their lifestyle, and then I'll kind of put a plan together for them. Might do a little bit of research and just work around what works for them. And I'll see them again to talk to them about that plan, what I want them to try and do over the next 6 weeks or so. And then I see them again 6 weeks later. How's it going? What successes have you had? What have you found challenging? How are your symptoms? And then I'll see them again 6 weeks after that. So over a 3-month period, I tend to see them about 4 times. And I'm available as well to support them in between. They quite often contact me, that kind of thing, to get extra support.
What's your website?
www.mindbodytree.co.uk.
Excellent. Lucy Kate, thank you very much.